Hello, Iona College. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. Jersey Joe and Big Shot Rob here. And if you're tuning in now, we just did everything on the NFL. That segment will be posted later to YouTube, so if you missed it, no worries. It will be posted later. So we're getting into the college football, and man, it was a great weekend for college football. Pretty weak 1 o'clock game slate, but from 3 o'clock on, it was a phenomenal day for college football. Before we get into the individual games, just have to say a general thing about the Big Ten. I mean, man, we've heard about how bad the Big Ten has looked and how they're maybe one of the worst out of the Big Five power conferences. I don't know if they're the worst out of the Big Five, but they were just horrendous on Saturday. I mean, there really was no signature performance out of all those programs. You had Nebraska barely hanging on. You had Ohio State losing, although I don't blame Ohio State as much because losing Braxton Miller is about as big a loss as you can get. I just don't blame them as much for that. And then you have Michigan just getting humiliated at Notre Dame. Michigan State was the only team that they lost, but they battled against Oregon, but they did lose. But there was just really nothing there. Iowa was embarrassing. I mean, Iowa against Ball State. If they lost that game against Ball State, I would have just lost it. It was just words really can't describe how bad the Big Ten was this Saturday. And Rob, I'll go to you. I mean, just what did you just think of the overall day? I mean, it just seemed to get from like you looked at the early games and you thought, okay, the big guys later, Ohio State, Michigan State, they'll make it up, but they really didn't. It was just a miserable day for the Big Ten.
You don't expect losses like this at the beginning of the year too, Joe. I couldn't believe the collapse with the Big Ten. This is one of my favorite conferences every year, and just to see all these teams, they all looked miserable out there. I mean, yes, as you said, the Michigan State game, that was a great game played by both Oregon and them, but Nebraska barely making it out. Very embarrassing week. Even Michigan just got embarrassed by Notre Dame, and it was just complete disappointment. But the Big Ten, I think we'll see more improvements in the next couple weeks, but I cannot just believe a huge collapse like this for almost every single team in that division. It was just out there. Like, you never expect things like this to happen in week 2 of college football. I'm sorry.
Definitely. And I want to say about Brady Hoke for Michigan, I got kind of buried for this because Colin Cowherd was kind of on this point earlier in the summer. He was saying how he wasn't sure if Brady Hoke was the guy there in Michigan, and I kind of relayed that kind of message, and some people weren't happy with it. But look, I have to say this. Life in sports is all about momentum, and Brady Hoke started out in Michigan at 11-2. After that 8-win season, after that a 7-win season, you see the problem there? You're headed in the wrong direction. The momentum started well. You're going down. I can stay with you if I see the continual improvement. It could take a while, but I'll stick with you if you're heading in the right direction. Brady Hoke's going the wrong way. You can't start at 11 wins and then finish last season with 7 wins. Now you're 1-1 this season. Now it's not all on Hoke. I think Devin Gardner had really. I've been extremely disappointed with the progression of his game. But I just think overall, I just don't know if Brady Hoke is the guy there. Rob, what do you think?
I think, Joe, he needs to get out of it. They need to get rid of him because Michigan, first of all, is one of the high-ranked programs in sports and college football. And this system, they need to keep improving every year. And I expect when I watch Michigan play, I expect 10-win seasons from them. That's how I see that school because they're a top-ranked school in the nation. And I've been very disappointed over the last couple years. Last time, they had a great year going 11-2, but after that, complete disappointment to me.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So let's go over some individual games. The big one you really got to go over is Oregon and Michigan State. And I'm a huge fan of Oregon. I mean, I love what they've done. I think Mark Helfrich, that was a huge win for him because I did have my concerns, especially with them losing 2 games last year. But that was Marcus Mariota's signature game. We always wanted to know. I mean, Marcus Mariota put up big numbers against a lot of teams, but he's never had that kind of signature win against a Stanford or against another big program. But this was it for Marcus Mariota. They were down at halftime, and the resiliency of Mariota making those plays on his feet, he did whatever he had to win, and that was a huge win for Mariota. I'm a big guy. I think that's so big for them. And if you look at Stanford in that USC game, which we'll get to, I think that's huge for Oregon, and they've run into a team at some point. It's been Stanford the last 2 years, but this is big for their confidence. huge win for Oregon, and hopefully that we'll see them in the college playoffs because, let's be honest, there's really not a lot of more exciting, dynamic teams than the Oregon Ducks.
No, not whatsoever, Joe. Ever since Chip Kelly with that amazing running offense, this Oregon team is on the map, one of the best schools, one of the best football schools, and this win was amazing on Saturday. Mariota really had so much momentum in this game, really stepped it up in the second half, helping outscore the Michigan State 28-3, and I have a lot of high hopes for this Oregon team. I think we're going to be seeing them in the BCS championship this year. Last year they struggled towards the end, but this year I have a lot for them.
Hey, you and me both. We're both pulling for them. Let's go to another West Coast game. Probably two of the best games of Saturday were both Pac-12 games. The other one was USC and Stanford. What a phenomenal game there. I mean, it was a 13-10 the final score, but I mean, man, that game easily could have been a 40-30 game. Stanford left so many plays on the field. They kept on moving the ball deep into USC territory, and then there'd just be one big play or one big mistake. It was such an exciting game. I was a little doubtful about Steve Sarkisian when they made the hire earlier last year, but after the first win against Fresno State last week, and now this huge win against Stanford, you could tell USC is bought into him. They're very organized. They looked good. It wasn't Kessler's best game. He's the quarterback of USC, but they found a way to get the job done, and that was a huge, huge win for USC. That's kind of just a shift from the old Lane Kiffin era to now the Sarkisian one. I think that was the first statement win of his tenure at USC, and I really like what I've seen out of the Trojans 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah, most definitely, Joe. Huge win for USC. I didn't expect them to win this game just because how they played the last couple years, UFC. And after this win, we might be seeing them hitting the heights of where they once were in 04 and 05 when they were a great team. And USC, I have a lot of faith for this team. Great game.
Sure do. Awesome game. Now, let's go to the Michigan-Notre Dame game. Michigan fans, you might want to turn it off now. But for Notre Dame, here's what I really like. Back in 2012 with Everett Golson, he was a one-trick pony. All the guy could do was run the ball. Just could not throw the ball for his life. He didn't play last year on the academic suspension, and he really, really worked in the offseason because you could just tell his passing game has improved tremendously. I mean, he's throwing the ball better than he ever has, and he's throwing the ball pretty well, and that's adding such a unique dynamic to this team because he's such a threat to run, and now he's got the throwing ability, and I really like the improvement I've seen out of Everett Golson. Notre Dame is definitely looking better than I thought they were going to be. This was a huge win at home, shutting down Michigan, and we talked a little bit about Michigan before, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but just disappointing, especially for me. Last year when I watched Devin Gardner in the Notre Dame game, I thought he was going to be a really good quarterback. I mean, he had a phenomenal game last year against Notre Dame, and ever since that, it's just been a gradual decline. I just haven't seen an improvement in his game, so disappointed in Devin Gardner, but for Everett Golson, really like what I've seen out of him. Speaking of another quarterback who last year was another one-trick pony, you have Auburn beating San Jose State 59-13. I'm a huge fan of the Auburn program and Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn's probably my favorite coach in college football right now. His offense is just so unique. And Nick Marshall, again, last year could not throw the football. He really needed to work on throwing the football, and he has. I mean, you look at Everett Golson and Nick Marshall. 2 years ago, both of them could not throw the ball for their life, and they've really improved as passers. And Nick Marshall's not throwing the ball a lot, but when he does, you could just tell the accuracy is better. He feels more confident passing the football, and it's just adding such a more lethal dynamic to this Auburn team because Auburn has tremendous wide receivers, and now that Nick Marshall's improved as a passer, man, I love this Auburn team. Auburn is the 5th-ranked team right now. I could see them climbing the charts there, but Rob, out of Nick Marshall and Auburn, who's a more exciting offense, Auburn right now or Oregon?
I think Oregon.
Going with Oregon?
I'm sorry, Mariota is my favorite quarterback right now in college football, besides Jameis Winston. And just this year, I'm seeing a lot of improvements from him from prior years, and I just think he's that excellent. I think Auburn, when you look at Auburn, the thing that steps out the most to you is not their quarterback, their rushing game, because that's what just kills you down the field.
Definitely. I mean, look, I put out a tweet on Saturday. I mean, it was just so much fun. I was switching back and forth from the Auburn and the Oregon game. it was just nonstop offense. You had Mariota, then when I switched to Auburn, you had Nick Marshall. It was just great, and it's just what you love about college football. The last game I want to go over before we go over the top 5 is the Virginia Tech and Ohio State. And look, as soon as Braxton Miller went down, you knew Ohio State's season was going to take a turn for the worse. I can't put a lot of blame on J.T. Barrett, though, the Ohio State's quarterback. You just look at the position he was thrown into. That's a hard position. I mean, he was not expecting to play. He's learning on the fly. He hasn't played well, but you can't put it all on his shoulders. Ohio State, really, it's going to be a tough year, and I feel bad. I hope Braxton Miller comes back next year and he's good, but it was a tough loss to a Virginia Tech team. Virginia Tech's 2-0, which they've been interesting the first 2 games, so hopefully their season will continue to progress, but it's tough for Ohio State this year. But now let's go over the top 5 teams. You have Florida State at 1. 2, you have Oregon, which I think is correct. I think they should be 2. Alabama was 3. Oklahoma was 4. And 5 is Auburn. Now, Rob, for me personally, I think the only team there that I still need to see more of is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, of course, beat Tulsa on Saturday, destroyed them 52-7. But that wasn't an opponent where I could really look and really be confident from. I think Trevor Knight has looked good. I still would like to see him become a better passer. His running game is very good, but I think he's got to get better at passing the football. But I want to see Oklahoma play a real tough opponent first. But aside from the other 4 teams, I have no problem with where they've been placed. What about you?
My main concern is Florida State. I'm going to keep them at number 1, but I need to see more improvement out of them. I haven't been too happy. This week with Citadel, they should have blown them out, Joe. Hands down, a 50-60 point game blowout they should have had. And the week before, Jameis Winston struggled. So this Florida State team, I think they just need to keep improving throughout the year. I'm going to keep them at 1, but they're the team I'm looking at the most who needs to improve. Otherwise, we're going to see them fall right out of the rankings.
I completely agree. I definitely think that Florida State, they should have beat Citadel, shut them out. They should have won 52-0, and the fact that the game was as low a score as it was, 37-12, it's a little concerning. I mean, Oklahoma State's a good program. I think that was a hard-fought win there, but Florida State, a little cause for concern because, look, there's a lot of good teams. Those other top 4 teams are good. I'm still got to keep my eye on Auburn. That SEC physicality, they've got great receivers. That defense is good again. Don't underestimate Gus Malzahn for a minute. Don't underestimate Alabama for a minute. They're going to keep getting better. Florida State's better watch out, but that is going to do it for our college football segment. When we come back, we will have a ton of stuff. Talking a little soccer first on the Sports Vault, and then Big Shot Rob's going to give us a little rundown of what happened at the U.S. Open. So a lot more to get to. Stay with us, and we will be right back.